Warahmatullahi wabarakatuhu. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. As-salatu was-salam ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Welcome everybody from around the world. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem, and this is the BAK show, where we're going to be discussing things which are important to you, the Muslim Ummah. We've got a lot of things going on, a lot of ground we need to cover. Yes, we are broadcasting live, and please feel free to share this broadcast. We invite everybody out there to send in your questions, your comments, your concerns. We will be trying to answer questions regarding the Palestinian conflict, that which is taking place in Syria and in the Middle East and in Muslim countries as best we possibly can. Again, as I said, I'm your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we're happy to have everybody here and joining us from around the world. So everybody, we're going to have to get started here. But before we do, I want to talk to you about a project that we're all working on. This project is called Voices of Truth. Now, let me tell you what Voices of Truth is all about. Voices of Truth is a project wherein we are documenting by interviews that will be seen all over the world, by website, of those people who were living under the oppression of Bashar al-Assad. We're talking about those people whose family members were disappeared. We're talking about those who lived under torture, indefinite detention, and so many other things. History has a way of repeating itself. And we want to make sure that 5, 6, 7 years from now, nobody's going to come along and say, hey, Bashar al-Assad was a good idea. And look what those pesky rebels did. They messed it up for the Palestinians, because Bashar al-Assad was not a supporter of the Palestinian cause. That's the reality of the situation. Anybody doesn't like that, send your question, your comment, or your concern, and we can deal with it at that particular time. So we want to make sure that those people who suffered, their voices are no longer silenced, and that's what Voices of Truth is all about. Take a look at our crowdfunding page. You can find it here on your screen. That's medina.com/voices of truth. medina.com/voices of truth. So do take a look at it. We're going to be looking forward to receiving any type of contribution that you possibly can. Now, let's get started on tonight. First of all, we've got numbers for you. 424, 130, 600. What are these numbers? 424 dead. 130 of those dead are children. More than 600 injured. These are numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry, based upon the onslaught which has been taking place over the past day and a half at the time of this broadcast. But let's understand these numbers. First of all, it's not 424. It's much more than that. Those 424 are the ones that they can confirm which were killed, mostly those who were brought to hospitals and they were registered. Those who are still under the rubble are not even counted yet. Those who are, the 600 injured are only the ones who went to the hospitals, and therefore they could be counted. So you have to understand these numbers. It's not limited just to this number. This is only those who are confirmed dead because they made their way to healthcare facilities, and therefore it could be recorded by the health ministry. So that's a general guideline. It's not a final number by any stretch of the imagination. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Now, in addition to the bombings which Israel has been carrying out after Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, unilaterally decided to pull out of the ceasefire agreement, an agreement which, based upon his actions and statements, never had the intention to carry out. And see, this has got to say a lot, brothers and sisters, because there's no such thing as international institutions, and that should be crystal clear. Where are the guarantors for this initiative, for this ceasefire? Where are the guarantors? Where there actually aren't any. Before this latest round of killings took place, it was stated by the U.S. press secretary, basically, or I should say the spokesperson for the White House. She basically said that Netanyahu had gotten the seal of approval from U.S. President Donald Trump, and then they proceeded with the onslaught. That was not hidden, that wasn't leaked, that was said in an interview on, I believe it was Fox News. So therefore, nobody can be under any disillusion that maybe the White House wasn't for it, they didn't know about it, wasn't clear, or somehow like that, because that wasn't the case. They knew about it, they approved it, and the Israelis went ahead with it. That's based upon their own statements. Those places which were hit, 30 were killed in a funeral procession in Beit Lahia in Gaza, which is crazy that you bomb a funeral procession. I mean, what kind of people would do something like that? Or what kind of people would allow them to do something like that? And what kind of people know about it and then don't report it? Next topic. They also bombed a UN facility in Gaza, in central Gaza, and they killed the UN Officer of Project Services Director. So UN facilities are not safe. Hospitals are not safe. There is no such thing as a safe haven in Gaza. Brothers and sisters, we really have to pay attention to what's going on here, because all of the old norms are off the table. Full stop. International law and so on and so forth, it doesn't mean anything. It's very clear for all the world to see that none of those former international norms have any role to play going on here. But I want to tell you something here. It was an interesting thing that I looked to see how Muslim countries were covering the war on Gaza. And I came across two very interesting countries and their English language publications, which are online. One of them is the Egyptian Gazette. The Egyptian Gazette. And I looked on their homepage to see how are the Egyptians covering this. They're right on the borders of Gaza, so you're going to find the best coverage there, right? No, not exactly. I want you to take a look at something here so that you get an idea of what the Egyptians are all about and where their priorities are. This is a screen capture of the Egyptian Gazette homepage. Now, as you can see, you've got stuff on there about casualties in new Israeli strikes on the world news section. As you can see it on the read also, it's next to the last on the bottom. Okay, it was not the top story. The top story is about agriculture. The top stories are about visiting dignitaries from one of the countries in Africa, and so on and so forth. This is not a big deal out there. Okay, they're working hard to make sure that this is not dominant in the Egyptian media. They want to make sure of that. But just when I thought that it couldn't go any lower, lo and behold, I checked out Gulf News, which is the United Arab Emirates top English language publication out there. Well, I'd like to show you a screen capture, but unfortunately I can't. Why? They didn't mention it in their entire home page. I'm going to say that again. Gulf News, which is the UAE's state-sponsored publication in English, doesn't even mention what's going on in the Palestinian territories. How about that? Does it get any worse than that? So if you're not even going to mention it, which means is that you're just hoping that it all will just go away somehow. And that's the approach that the Emiratis have been taking. You know, it's worth mentioning that the Middle East Eye has been reporting that the United Arab Emirates is basically lobbying the Trump administration not to approve the reconstruction plan, which has been put forward by Egypt with the support of the other Arab countries, including the Palestinian leadership in the form of Hamas. But it wasn't going to make a difference anyway because he wasn't going to go for it and all. It wasn't designed for him to approve it. But it just shows you where the Emiratis are. And it seems that whenever there is some type of Islamic cause, you always find the Emiratis show up with their paycheck, with their checkbooks, trying to work against the forces of Islam. It just happens time and time again. Name the country, Sudan. You want to talk about, Yemen. Wherever you want to talk about it, the Emiratis always show up, and it's always the same issue. Their ambassador to the United States, Yusuf Otaiba, who's been a long-standing figure in Washington and has got a lot of access to the White House, has been pressuring or trying to pressure the Trump administration to pressure Egypt to take in forcibly displaced refugees. In other words, when they ethnically cleanse or try to the Gaza Strip, that Egypt will take on these refugees. That's the work that the United Arab Emirates are into, and they've been into for a long time. Okay, everybody, look, we're going to take a look and see some of the questions that you have here. I did want to mention something. In Turkey, interesting thing, KFC and Pizza Hut are closing 537 branches around the country due to the boycotts in which the people have stopped buying these products because they support Israel. 537 different branches around Turkey. And we're not even talking about other branches around the world which have closed. We're not talking about Starbucks losing billions of dollars and so on and so forth. We haven't even gotten there yet. I'm saying that, guys, boycotts matter. It matters. Do not listen to people who will come forward and tell you that the boycotts don't matter. You're not making an impact. It doesn't, you're only making things difficult for yourself. Your family likes pizza and Pizza Hut, so go ahead and just buy it. So many people have said, I will not buy from these companies which are supporting Israel, and it worked. 537 branches in Turkey alone slated to be closed. It was just announced. I have to tell you, brothers and sisters, keep boycotting. Keep your voices being raised because it matters. It's not something that, one person, Faris Hamadi, tries to convince people he's an influencer from the United Arab Emirates, and he's been saying that the boycott isn't something that you should be calling to. That's only to be done by the ruler. But when the rulers are actually working alongside the Israelis, well, what do you expect? Do you expect that they're going to say, yes, you could boycott? Why? Because he gets smacked over the back of the head by the Israelis and be told to get in your place. So I digress. The point of the matter here is that keep boycotting and don't listen to influencers tell you it doesn't matter, because obviously it does. Now, okay, let's take a look and let's see. Omar C has a question here, and he says, where is Huras ad-Din? Huras ad-Din basically disbanded after the fall of Damascus. Their fighters are still around, but they're not functioning as an entity or a fighting unit at the current time. Now, okay, Macho Man says, do you think it's possible the U.S. would do ground invasion in Yemen? I think it's possible, but I think it's also possible that they get their butts kicked out there. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be under delusions of grandeur that the Ansar Allah could defeat a superpower like America. But the point of the matter is that they don't have to. All they have to do is keep America from winning. It's not the same thing of actually defeating them and keeping them from winning. The two are not necessarily the same. All they've got to do is just inflict enough casualties on American troops so that they will not want to stay. I think that they're quite capable of doing that. In addition to that, dragging America into another war overseas is something that I think that the American people are not going to really have a big stomach for. We'll have to see the way the news media is going to spin it, because the American people are very much influenced by the news media. If the news media is not talking about it, then they don't talk about it. If the news media is not telling you it's a bad idea, then they think whatever the news media will tell them. So yeah, all of that's going to play a role, but I will say that I could say that I think that it's possible. I'm not going to say I think that it's probable, but it's possible. But I would say that don't think that it's going to that's a game changer, because I don't think that it is. Next, we've got Salaam alaikum, Akhi Bilal. Welcome salam wa barakatuh. Do you think Jolani's stance on Israel's invasion into Syria might change due to second round of fighting in Gaza restarting? Israel is looking to expand borders on multiple fronts. If you're asking me if I think, quoting from you, that Jolani's stance on Israel's invasion to Syria might change due to second round of fighting in Gaza restarting, no, I don't think that that in and of itself is going to change his stance, which hasn't been very robust. And we talked a little bit about that last night, but I don't think that in and of itself is going to change the calculus in Damascus. I think that potential troop movements by the Israelis, that might change the calculus a bit in the circles of power in Damascus, because you got to understand something. They're 25 kilometers outside of the capital, Damascus. That's a problem. That's a real problem. Okay, let's take a look and see what we have here. Next, we have Omar Ghorzai. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. Don't you think the Syrian government should stop the SDF and Erdogan's hypocrite state of Turkey from striking at people of Syrian Jazeera? Let me read that again. Don't you think the Syrian government should stop the SDF and Erdogan's hypocrite state of Turkey from striking at people of Syrian Jazeera? Yeah, I'm really sorry, man. I didn't quite understand that question right there. A Syrian Jazeera? No, I didn't understand that. If you can come back and send us a bit of a clarification, I'll do my best to try to answer it, inshallah. Next, Ahmed says, how do you see the situation in Gaza coming to an end? What I do see, I'm not going to pretend and tell you that I can see an ending to the situation. I can just see it morphing from one thing to another thing. But I did see a headline wherein the IDF are preparing to launch a ground invasion so that they could retake certain territories that they took several times already, and this is what is being reported. So yeah, I could imagine that they would try to forcibly displace the Palestinian people into Egypt or another place. I could see them trying to do that. I don't think that that's going to be successful at all. I think that there will be more clashes than the state of Israel is going to be willing to weather. So no, I don't think that that's going to happen. So I can't tell you how it's going to end, where it's going to end. And I really couldn't tell you that, because it's changing from one month to the next. And that's the reality of the situation. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Bilal Abdul Kareem. Walaikum salam wa What can you tell us about the FSA and at TENF, their close relations to international coalition, and their loyalties and ideology? Well, this is an area where the forces out there were US backed. And I do remember going back some time ago where some of the brothers who were thinking to participate with them contacted me and asked me, this is an American-backed thing. Do I think that it was a good idea, that it's a good idea for them to join? They could maybe do something good for the Syrian revolution and so on and so forth. And I'll tell you what I told them. No, don't join it. The Americans don't mean any good for the Syrian people. And therefore, if you join them, you will be helping them against the Syrian people. There's no good in it. I'll say that again. There's no good in working with the Americans. The Americans are working lock, stock, and barrel with the Israelis, and they're behind much of the woes in many Muslim countries. I'm not saying that it's all of them. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that the Americans have a big role in the suffering of Muslims. And anyone who will join the American forces or the American government or their intelligence agencies, they're betraying their shahada. Okay, we've got Wayne, who says that he's watching from Falls Church, Virginia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, man. Jazakallah khair for tuning in. Okay, we've got here, Ahmed is back, and he says, correction, Akhi, it's Rabbi Faris. Well, he's referring to Faris Hamadi, who is an online influencer, a former fitness coach turned sheikh, and he's referred to as Rabbi Faris because of his stances. And we won't get too far into that, but I don't know if I'm going to go there. I'm not really there. I don't agree with his stances. He's blocked me. I think it would be better if he would just be silent. I think that this would be better for him in his dunya and his akhirah. But that's as far as I'm going to take it. I'm not going to take it any further than that. Next, we've got Answer 95. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Could you tell us something about the status of the new Syrian government's laws? No. For example, is it going to be Sharia law, or is Jolani making a democratic state? Well, he's not making a democratic state. That's one thing, because a democratic state would be something where the will of the people would govern, would decide the laws and decide who governs. Arab countries are not known for that, and the new government, they're very Arab. So what we've seen so far is not a shift or a major shift. Yes, there have been a lot of changes in the respect that Bashar al-Assad is gone. The prisons, or most of them, have been opened. Yes, and so there's a lot of good things that have taken place. There's no question about that. But are we seeing a democratic state? Well, I'm not a supporter of democracy, and we could talk about that at another time. But if democracy is what you're looking for, you're not going to find it here in Syria, number one. Number two, you mentioned, is it going to be Sharia law? I have not seen any evidence that it's going to be Sharia law. I see technocrats much more than I see people who have knowledge of that which is allowed and not allowed in the Sharia. And I don't see any of those religious people who have, of the scholars who have positions of authority. I'm not talking about awqaf. I'm talking about decision-making authority. But at the end of the day, traditionally in Arab countries, all of the power lies in the hands of the main leader. And the interim Constitution, which was signed into law, totally reflects that. Okay. Next, Omar C says, what is AQ doing in Syria, or did they all revert to HTS? AQ doesn't function as an entity in Syria anymore and has not for quite some time. So their members have gone to different groups, different organizations, and doing different things. Now, next. Assalamu alaikum. Brother Bilal, what do you think of a Shabab? These guys are on an offensive nowadays and almost killed the president a few days ago. I personally think they are Khawarij. By the way, Somalia is 100% Muslim. Yes, Somalia is 100% Muslim, but that doesn't mean that the actions of those individuals who are in authority, their actions are Muslim oriented. It doesn't mean that. After having said that, I am not, nor have been, a supporter of Al-Shabaab. Their attacks in the Kenya Mall, randomly shooting and killing men, women, and shooting up a cooking contest in a mall. And I don't mean that it was hit with a rocket. This is where their fighters were actually pointing AK-47s and shooting the people in restaurants and shooting them in the malls and such like that. I don't support an organization like that. I can't bring myself to support them. They do not behave in an Islamic fashion. After having said that, they're still there after a number of years, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide them. They've done many reprehensible things, like surrendering Muslims that oppose them to the Kenyan authorities who are not Muslim, who have been very, very harsh to any Muslim fighter. So there's a lot for them to answer for. That's a story of another day and another program. We need to maybe do a program specifically about that. Next, we've got here, oh, and you said last time that you would like to make an interview with Muslim Shishani, but I heard that he became Shaheed after his home was targeted by Russia in Jisr al-Shuhur. Not true. Not true. Vitland says, I think Bilal has been compromised. He is supporting the Shia Houthis who supported Assad. Dude, where did you get that from, man? Come on, let's try to focus on what I said and the position that I'm taking. What I said regarding the Houthis, fact. Their targeting of ships going to and from the Israel, which imports 50% of its food. Their position is that until the onslaught in Gaza stops, they will target those ships. They will target American ships and any other ships going to or from Israel. Fact. They have been doing that and carrying out those attacks. Fact. Has Saudi Arabia been doing that? No. Bahrain, have they been doing that? No. They've opened up their land corridors so that goods that are threatened by the Houthis can go through the Bahraini and the Emirati ports, through Saudi territory, onto Jordan and into Israel. They've been trying to help the Israelis circumvent the blockade. Fact. We're going to talk facts here. Let's not talk about opinions. The Sunni Muslim countries, Egypt, Jordan, and so on and so forth, haven't done an infinitesimal microfraction of what the Houthis have done. Now, after we have said that, are they Iranian-backed? Yes, they are. Are they under the complete control of Iran? No, they are not. They are not. They're looked at more as a strategic ally than a proxy. That's the reality of the situation, number one. So when we look at the fact that the Houthis are the only ones outside, I'm sorry, in that area operating. If the question is, should Sunni Muslims cooperate with them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوِنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوِنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, to help one another in righteousness and piety, and not to help one another in sin and transgression. So I ask you again, these people, the Houthis, are trying to pressure the Israelis to stop the onslaught against Muslims in the Palestinian territories. Is that birri wa taqwa? Is that righteousness and piety? Absolutely, positively it is. And Allah says that we should cooperate in those matters. And again, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to tell them all of your secrets. It doesn't mean that you have to let them know all of your strengths and your weaknesses to be able to work alongside people to bring about a greater good for a people who are being genocided. That's what I said. And if you call that I've been compromised, okay, you're free to, but it's just not accurate. It's factually incorrect. Let's see. Alrighty. Okay. All right. Now, Syrian Jazeera are the territories north of Euphrates, like province of Raqqa, Al-Hasaka, and Deir ez-Zor. People are being killed and detained because of Turkey and SDF attacking on each other. All right, those territories, and it wasn't that long ago that I was in Deir ez-Zor. Those territories are territories wherein the SDF, which are the Kurdish militia forces, they have a large presence there, but you also have rebel forces that are in those territories also. So both sides have lots of military assets in those areas. Now, people are being killed and detained. Well, it's a front line there. So that has been going on for some time. Deir ez-Zor is almost destroyed. And therefore, most of the people have left. There are no real economic opportunities that are there, but there are still some people that are there. And yes, care should be given towards civilians, but I don't want a picture to be painted that really isn't accurate, wherein they're just rounding up large numbers of people. It's primarily skirmishes going back and forth between the two fighting forces. That's the reality of it. I need to go back out there again so that we could see what the effects of the agreement that was signed by Madloum Abdi, who is the head of the Kurdish militia forces, what effects that's having on the ground. I spoke to some people just after Maghrib today, and they said so far there haven't been any changes on the ground. So yeah. And Raqqa and Hasaka, these are under the SDF. And they're in Raqqa and Hasaka, there are no rebel forces there. That's completely under the control of the SDF. Now, Waqar Salim says, is the Sharia law being implemented in Syria as a whole, or mostly, or partially, or is it Ahlul Hadith, Aqidah, and Fiqh, or is it Fatawa, Al-Hindiyya, or Al-Maghiriyya, or Hanafi, Hanbali, or Madhab? Brother, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Because I'm not seeing that much Sharia in that form being put forward for me to tell you that it's on this madhab or that madhab and so on and so forth. I think that the Syrian people would take any of the madhabs of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, even if there will be some difference of opinion here or there, but at least you know where you stand in terms of what the laws are actually going to be. Now, granted, it's still new, and I guess the new government will need some time to get its feet underneath itself and to assert certain control. But the people here are, we're waiting and we're seeing, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. So we'll wait and see how that's going to play out. But that's a question that I just can't answer right now because it's not clear. Mm. Okay, next question. A Muslim says, Assalamu alaikum, akhi, wa alaikum salam. What's your opinion on the new Syrian president? Is he a U.S. and Israel puppet or someone the Sunni support? Barakallahu feek. I don't think that that's the most, it's not the question that I think is going to bring about the most benefit. I'll tell you like this, sister. Who this one is working for, that one is working for, and so on and so forth. For the most part, you're never going to know. But I say that what we have to look at is what the actions of that person actually is. Is he going to implement the Quran and the Sunnah? Yes or no? That's what I think is important. Because if he's not going to implement it, but he's working for the Russians, or he's working for the Americans, or he's working for the Saudis, or he's working for the Bahrainis, it doesn't make a difference. If he's going to implement the Quran and Sunnah, then you've got something. You've got what you were after. So I don't think that, it would be the right thing to do to speculate that he's working for this one and he's working for that one. No, I don't want to speculate that. But what I will say is that we need to see more Islamic governance on the ground going forward for there to be an establishment of that Sunni base. Of course, people follow him simply because he's not Alawite or he's not Shia and he's not Druze and he's Sunni. So people follow him based upon that, but that's not going to last forever. And I think at some point, people are going to have to start seeing more than they're seeing now on the ground moving forward. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So sister, I would say this. What we have to watch and see is how much Quran and Sunnah is being implemented on the ground. That's where we're going to know who's who and what's what. All right, now let's take one last question. Answer 95, could you make a podcast with 5 pillars? Yeah, sure. Sure. I like those guys. I like them a lot. So, yeah. All right, we're going to wrap this up with the last statement from Vitland. He said, the Houthis are only helping Gaza for their own self-interest. It has nothing to do with caring about Palestinians. They have no real sincerity. They don't care about those people, same as Hezbollah. All right, the first thing I'm going to say is that you don't have to be Ahl Sunnah to feel something for suffering people like the Palestinians. Dude, you don't even have to be Muslim to feel that what's happening to the Palestinians is not right. And we've seen so many protests of millions of people around the world who are not Muslim, but they protest in support of Palestine because they know what the Israelis are doing with the American support is wrong. So I don't know if we should be even talking about they have no real sincerity. This is the first thing. They suffered a lot. I'm talking about the Houthis and the Yemenis, a lot under the Saudi-led invasion and wars that were fought around 2015 there in their country that produced a man-made famine. That's serious business, brother. A famine that was caused by blockades by your neighbor in Saudi Arabia. Ouch. Okay. So when you put all of that together, I like to see people who were suffering and then try to alleviate the suffering from other people. Because too often, once people climb up the ladder, they pull the ladder up behind them and they leave the other suffering people who were in this exact position that they were just in to sink away in the sand. And so I applaud them for that, number one. Number two, their intention is with Allah. I know what they're doing on the ground. And what their intention is, I mean, what businesses are mine? But their intention is, I ain't got nothing to do with that. And I will never be able to know exactly what their intention is. And who said that I have to know their intention to be able to وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, to help one another in righteousness and piety? If you'll have non-Muslims that, for example, there's a man walking down the street, he has a cross on his neck, and he has the robes of a pastor from a church. And all of a sudden, there are three men who are trying to attack a woman and rob her and drag her into an alley. He decides to go over and help. Are you going to help him out? But then somebody says, why are you going to help him out? You don't know what his intention is. Maybe he's doing it for the TV cameras. Well, there ain't no cameras around, but maybe he's doing it for the TV cameras. No, he's doing something good, and you should help him in doing something good. And not to be sitting around worrying about what their intentions are. If you look at their actions on the ground, it's much more than all of those rich Gulf countries have done combined. And therefore, I think that helping them in righteousness and piety is a good thing, but you should be cautious and not tell them all of your secrets. And I think we're going to have to leave it there. But before you go, guys, please listen to me. Check me out. Before you go, I want to just very briefly make sure that you understand about our initiative. It's called Voices of Truth. We are documenting the efforts, we are documenting the atrocities which were committed by the Assad regime, wherein we are interviewing those who were affected, those family members of those who were disappeared, tortured, and in some cases, the torturers. But we need your help. We need you to financially help us out so we can make this a reality. Check out our crowdfunding page. That's medina.com/voices of truth. It's right there on your screen. medina.com/voices of truth. I am spearheading this project, and we really need your contribution. If you can do $10, $20, $30, brother, sister, help us out. We can really use it. If we don't document these atrocities which were covered, believe me, they're going to happen again. And there has to be a public record out there of people whose voices were silenced, and we want to work to make sure that they are no longer silenced. That's medina.com/voices of truth. Check out our crowdfunding page. Jazakumullahu khairan. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.